The loneliest sound on the frontier was not the wind howling across open land. It was the sound of boots echoing through a house built too large for one man's heart. Fletcher Hinton knew that sound well. Every morning it followed him from room to room like a reminder that wealth could buy land and cattle, but never warmth. Fletcher Hinton had built his fortune the hard way. He owned more land than most men in Montana Territory and more cattle than he cared to count. People lowered their voices when he entered a room. Men respected him. Some feared him. No one truly knew him. At night, when the ranch house fell quiet and the lamps burned low, there was no voice waiting for him, only silence. He woke every day at 4:30, the same way he had for 12 years. Outside his window, the Montana land stretched wide and cold, silver under the early light. He dressed without thinking. Boots, trousers, shirt, each movement practiced and exact. The house around him stood tall and impressive. 15 rooms, 6 fireplaces, a dining table long enough for 20 people. He ate breakfast alone at one end of it. At 5:15, his housekeeper brought his coffee. Her name was Kari. She placed the cup down quietly, steam rising between them. She never startled, never rushed, never lingered longer than needed. Brown hair pulled back tight, plain dress, calm eyes the color of creekstones. "Thank you," Fletcher said. She nodded once and turned back toward the kitchen. Fletcher watched her leave. He always did. She moved through his house like something steady and necessary, shaping the place without ever demanding attention. She had worked for him 3 years. He was 34, wealthy, respected, and lonely enough to notice the exact moment she stepped out of the room. By sunrise, Fletcher was in the corral with his men. 15 hands worked the ranch. They tipped their hats as he passed. "Morning, boss," said Omar Villegas, his foreman. Solid, dependable, the kind of man who never wasted words. "Morning," Fletcher replied. "Fence on the north pasture looked weak yesterday. Already sent men at dawn." "Good." That was how Fletcher lived. Efficient, controlled, no wasted emotion. His father had taught him that early. Feelings were weaknesses. Weakness invited loss. By mid-morning, Fletcher reviewed ledgers in his study. The numbers were strong. Beef prices rising. Railroad investments paying off. On paper, Fletcher Hinton had everything a man could want. At noon, Carrie brought his lunch. Roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread. "The pantry needs restocking," she said. "I'll need the wagon Thursday. Take it whenever you need." "Thank you." She turned to leave, then paused. Fletcher opened his mouth, unsure why. "The bread is good," he said. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly, not a full smile, just acknowledgement. Then she was gone. That evening, Fletcher attended a gathering at the Compton Ranch. He rarely missed these events. Business happened in parlors as often as banks. Refusing would be noticed. Romeo Compton greeted him loudly, all laughter and red cheeks. "Fletcher, you've been scarce lately," Romeo said. "Eric here thinks you're hiding something." Eric Thornton stood nearby, whiskey in hand, smiling thinly. "You used to join us for poker every week." "Ranch keeps me busy," Fletcher said. "Busy doing what?" Romeo laughed. "Omar could run that place in his sleep." Another man, Colt McBride, grinned from the corner. "You're not getting younger, Hinton. Time to find a wife." "I'll survive," Fletcher said. "There's the territorial ball next month," Romeo said brightly. "Every proper family will be there. You should bring someone." Fletcher hadn't thought about the ball in years. He usually avoided it. "I'll think about it," he said. That night, riding home beneath a sky full of stars, Fletcher thought about what they had said. Legacy, heirs, a future beyond land and cattle. He thought about the women who would attend that ball. Polished smiles, careful words, people who saw him as property, not a person. And then, against his will, he thought about Carrie. When he arrived home, the house was dark except for a lamp glowing softly in the kitchen. She always left one on for him. A covered plate waited on the table. Beside it, a small note. "North pasture fence fixed. 8 posts replaced. K. He ate alone in the quiet. The next morning at 5:15, Carrie brought his coffee as usual. "I'm thinking of attending the territorial ball," Fletcher said suddenly. She paused. "That seems appropriate for a man of your standing," she replied. "Romeo thinks I should bring someone." "I see." "The suitable women bore me," Fletcher said without thinking. Carrie met his gaze briefly, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "Then perhaps you should bring someone unsuitable," she said. Before he could respond, she turned and left. Fletcher sat there, staring into his cooling coffee, realizing he had just been perfectly put in his place by his own housekeeper. And for the first time in years, he smiled. 3 days later, standing in his study with an invitation in hand, Fletcher made a choice that would change everything. "Carrie," he said as she entered with fresh linens. "Yes, Mr. Hinton." He looked at her, really looked. "Would you attend the ball with me?" The linen slipped from her hands and hit the floor. She stared at him as if he had lost his mind. And maybe, for the first time in his life, he finally had. Carrie did not answer right away. She bent down slowly and picked up the fallen linens, smoothing them as if her hands needed something steady to do. When she straightened, her face was calm, but her eyes were not. "Mr. Hinton," she said carefully, "I am your housekeeper." "I know." "Then you understand how improper that is." "I do." She set the linens on a chair, fingers pressing into the fabric. "Why would you ask me something like that?" Fletcher turned toward the window. It was easier not to look at her. "Because every woman who will be at that ball wants something from me. My land, my money, my name. They look at me like a bank, not a man." He turned back. "You are the only person in my life who has never done that." Carrie shook her head slowly. "If I walk into that ballroom on your arm, people will talk." "Let them. They will mock you. I have survived worse." "They will mock me more," she said quietly. Fletcher stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "I would not let anyone disrespect you." "You cannot stop whispers," she said. "You are powerful, but you are not above gossip." She moved toward the door. "Carrie, wait." She stopped, but did not turn around. "If you agree," Fletcher said, his voice low, "I will treat you as an equal companion, not a decoration, not a scandal, just someone I want beside me." Silence filled the room. Finally she turned. Her expression had changed, guarded, thoughtful, shaken. "I need time," she said. "Take it." She left, and Fletcher stood alone, heart pounding harder than it ever had during a cattle drive or business deal. The next 2 days passed strangely. The ranch ran as usual. The house stayed orderly. But something had shifted. Fletcher noticed small things he had never allowed himself to notice before. The way Carrie paused to study flowers before arranging them. The way she read at night, lips moving slightly as she worked through difficult words. The way she spoke to him without fear or flattery. On the 3rd day, she found him in the barn while he checked a horse with an injured leg. "I will go," she said. "On conditions." Fletcher straightened. "Name them." "I will not lie about who I am," she said. "If anyone asks, I am your housekeeper." "Agreed." "If anyone disrespects me, I leave immediately." "Fair." She hesitated. "And when we return, nothing changes. I am still your employee. We keep proper distance." Something tightened painfully in Fletcher's chest. "Understood." She nodded once. "Then I accept." The ball was 3 weeks away. Helena buzzed with talk of it. Carrie needed a dress. Fletcher gave her money. She argued. He insisted. She took it only after promising she would repay him. "Use my name," he said one evening. She frowned. "That feels strange." "It will feel stranger if you call me sir at a ball." "Very well," she said. "Fletcher." The name sounded different in her voice, closer. They began practicing dancing in the evenings. At first, Carrie was stiff and uncertain, counting under her breath. Fletcher guided her patiently. "Do not look at your feet," he said. "Look at me." When she did, the room seemed to shrink around them. Their movements grew smoother, more natural. One night, Fletcher stepped on her foot. She immediately stepped on his. "That was on purpose," he said. "So was yours," she replied. He laughed, surprised by the sound. Real laughter. Carrie smiled fully for the first time he had ever seen. They kept dancing. The lamps burned low. The air grew warm. When the clock chimed, they stepped apart quickly, both breathing too fast. "We should stop," she said. Yes. They did not practice the next night. Or the one after. The tension became harder to ignore. On the night before the ball, Kari stood at the top of the stairs in her finished dress. Blue silk. Simple. Elegant. Her hair was pinned back softly. She looked like herself, only brighter. "Will I embarrass you?" she asked. "You will silence every room you enter," Fletcher said. The carriage ride to Helena was long and quiet. When the road jolted, Carrie lurched forward and Fletcher caught her without thinking. For a moment, they were too close, too aware. He released her gently. When they arrived, music spilled from the ballroom. Light glowed through tall windows. Fletcher offered his arm. Carrie took it, her hand trembling slightly. Inside, the room glittered with wealth and judgment. Romeo Compton spotted them instantly. His smile froze when he saw Carrie. "Well," Romeo said loudly, "this is unexpected." "This is my companion for the evening," Fletcher said calmly. Whispers began immediately. Eric Thornton raised an eyebrow. Colt McBride smirked. Carrie felt it. Fletcher felt her stiffen. Then she lifted her chin and stepped forward with quiet confidence. Heads turned. Conversation stalled. She did not rush. She did not shrink. Fletcher watched her move through the room and felt something new take root in his chest. Pride. When the music changed to a waltz, Fletcher held out his hand. "May I?" Carrie placed her hand in his. They stepped onto the floor together, and the room faded away. But the night was only beginning, and the hardest moments were still ahead. The room watched them as they danced. Fletcher felt it in the weight of the stairs, the sudden hush, the way whispers spread like fire through dry grass. But none of it mattered once the music carried them forward. Carrie moved with him easily now, her hand steady on his shoulder, her other hand warm in his. She no longer counted the steps. She trusted him. When the music ended, polite applause filled the room. Some clapped out of habit. Others clapped because they had no choice. Fletcher led Carrie off the floor, his hand still at her waist. "I need air," she said quietly. "I'll come with you." "No," she replied. "Stay, I'll be fine." She slipped toward the terrace doors. Fletcher watched her go, jaw tight, knowing half the room had just seen exactly how much he cared. Romeo Compton appeared beside him, smiling too widely. "You certainly gave us something to talk about." Fletcher met his gaze. Good. Outside, the cold night air hit Kari's face. She gripped the stone railing, breathing hard. Fletcher joined her moments later. "You all right?" "I warned you," she said. "This changes things." "Yes," he replied. "It does." She turned to face him. "You looked at me in there like I was the only person in that room." "You were. This is dangerous." "I know." They stood too close, the space between them charged with everything they had not said. Finally, Fletcher stepped back. "For tonight," he said, "can we just be two people at a ball?" Kari studied him, then nodded. "For tonight." When they returned inside, the evening shifted. People approached them differently now, less mocking, more curious. Kari answered questions calmly. She corrected a banker's cattle figures without raising her voice. She helped a nervous servant who dropped a tray. When a man's chair collapsed beneath him, she offered hers without hesitation, saving him from humiliation. Fletcher watched it all, his admiration growing with every quiet act. Later, red wine spilled across the blue silk of her dress. The waiter froze in terror. "It's all right," Carrie said gently. "Accidents happen." The waiter nearly cried with relief. They left at midnight. The carriage ride home was quiet, heavy with things unsaid. At the door, Carrie turned to him. "Tonight mattered," she said. "I know." She went inside, leaving Fletcher standing in the dark, knowing nothing would ever return to the way it was. 3 days later, a letter arrived for Carrie. Heavy paper, blue wax seal. She read it alone. That evening, she told him her aunt had died in Boston and left her enough money to start over, to leave. "You should take it," Fletcher said after a long silence. "You deserve choices." Her eyes filled. "You're letting me go." "I won't trap you." A week later, she left for Boston. The house fell silent again, but this time the silence hurt. 3 weeks passed. Fletcher worked until exhaustion, but nothing filled the emptiness. Then, one afternoon, a carriage rolled into the yard. Carrie stepped down, travel-worn but steady. "I came back," she said. "Why?" "Because I don't want freedom without you." She told him she wanted partnership, not rescue, choice, not obligation. Fletcher took her hands. "Then stay, as my equal, as my wife." She smiled through tears. "Only if you ask properly." He dropped to one knee right there in the dirt. She said yes. They married quietly that winter. No grand ball, just truth. Years later, the house that once echoed with loneliness rang with laughter. Children's voices filled the halls. The ranch prospered, but more importantly, it became a home. Sometimes, late at night, Fletcher would remember the ball, the whispers, the moment she walked in and changed everything. He had gone to be mocked.